Welcome to September. Weird, right? I was super concerned that if that Buckeye game didn't change in the third quarter, none of you may be here. Thank you. Listen, we are starting something new today. So if it is your first week here, or maybe you're still getting used to the flow here, about every month we start a new series pretty much. So this month we're starting a brand new series that we're calling A Generous Life. And frankly, I just think it's important that we learn what it means to be generous as people in all things. I've been thinking a lot lately about the Lord and how he's been generous to me. Has he been generous to you? Yeah, and some of you are going, I know that's the right thing to say, but it doesn't feel like it. And I want you to know that if that's where you find yourself today, it's okay. It's okay. But the Lord has been extremely generous. In fact, we had a conversation just a few weeks ago that if you go back and you look at how man was made, we're just a pile of dirt that God formed, and then he breathed life into us. We are dirt and the breath of God. That's what a human is. And it's only because of the breath of God that we exist. That's pretty generous. She agrees. It's pretty generous. So this morning, what I thought we would do is I thought we would jump in to a conversation about this God of generosity and what that means for us. Because let's be honest, generosity doesn't come naturally to us, does it? For most of us. Let me do this. Let me change that statement. Generosity doesn't come naturally to me. How's that? Y'all can find your place in that. But generosity does not come naturally to me. So how is it possible that we are created in the image of God and God breathed life into us and we see him as this generous being and we know that we're made in his image, but generosity doesn't seem to come naturally? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about how a generous God makes people in his image and we end up being less than generous in most cases. But I want to start off with a sentence that I believe somebody in here may disagree with. Okay? And it's okay if you do. This is not biblical. This is Tim. Okay? I believe we all desire to be generous people. I believe every person on the face of the earth desires to be generous. And you're already thinking of like 20 people who you know don't fit that. Okay, you're already going, no, you haven't met so-and-so, or have you been watching the news lately about such and such? But no, Pastor Tim, everyone doesn't desire to be generous. I believe we do. And I believe we can't help it because we're made in the image of God. I believe that we're all wired for generosity. I just believe for some people that feels really far away. And for other people, generosity matters to them, but not as much as they matter to them. Are you with me? See, I think everyone wants to be generous, but we're not quite sure how to get from where we are to generosity. And I think we have a false picture of what it means to be generous as people. So that's what we're going to dive into today, is what does it look like for us to be generous people? But before we get started, I need you to understand something so that this whole month is going to go well, okay? Generosity is about mindset, not money. Okay, let's all say that together. Mindset, not money. This has nothing to do with money. Let me help you. God doesn't need our money. Okay? Anything that God has wanted to accomplish in the world has not started because he's been waiting for people to fund it. God can do what he wants, when he wants, however he wants, and he doesn't need your money or my money to accomplish it. So when we talk about generosity, we are going to talk about money a little bit, but we're talking about mindset, not money. You know, there are people who give a lot of money and they're still not generous. Do you feel that? Right? You can like empty your wallet, empty your bank account and be like, look at all the wonderful things I do for people, and still not live generously. Mindset, not money. You with me? Everybody wants to be generous, but it's about mindset, not money. So, in order to do this well, we have to go back to the beginning. Okay? If you haven't figured it out yet, and this is going to be a theme for as long as we're doing this together, okay? I believe a couple things. One, I believe that everything starts in the garden. Everything starts with God's perfect design for humanity, where it's God and man. And I believe that when we get to the end of time, when you read the description of what things will look like, it's almost like we're going to a new garden. Okay? So when we read things in Scripture, it's important for us to get the foundation of what God is trying to do in His people, and what He's trying to do is get them back in relationship with Him that takes them back to the Garden of Eden. So let me set the picture. We're in a desert. Sand. Sparse trees. You might see one off in the distance if you look. Mountains. Those mountains probably have more green on them than we're used to. But in the middle of all of this sits a garden, flush with trees and green life, animals, water. And that is what the Lord created for Adam and Eve to live in. So on the outside, desert. But inside this space, a garden. Paradise. Okay? In the middle of that, if you go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, it says this: the Lord God made all kinds of trees to grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. Pleasing to the eye and good for food. Got that? Pleasing to the eye, good for food. Okay? In the middle of the garden, we get to know about two specific trees. One, in the middle of the garden, the tree of life, and the other, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Pleasing to the eye, good for food. It's the same word, good, that God used at the end of each day of creation, right? Or many of the days of creation. It says, and God said it was good, right? So let's learn some Hebrew together. You ready? The word good in Hebrew is the word tov. Everyone say tov. I was having this conversation with Jackson, my oldest, in the car yesterday, I believe, and we were talking about tov in Hebrew. You guys ever have a conversation about Hebrew with your kid? Right? It's just a pastor thing, I know. It's just me. But we're in the car and we're talking about tov. And I was explaining to him that the word mazel tov comes from the word tov. Right? Mazel meaning under the constellations of the sky, tov meaning good. So that you would live a good life under the sky and the heavens. That's what mazel tov means. But I told him, like, you guys have all these cool fancy words that adults don't understand. Right? So he and I were having a conversation about how if you can say no cap, then you should also be able to say lowercase, because it means the same thing, because there's no capitals. And he's like, Dad, you're ridiculous. So adults, I think it's time for us to fight back. Okay? For the next 7 days, every time you want to say the word good, look at your kid and just go, it's tov. And it'll sound new and hip, but the truth is it's from the beginning. All right? The word tov means good. Okay? The other word, which means pleasing to the eye, is the word hamad. Do not say that, because the person in front of you will be very frustrated with you, because you may spit on them. Okay? I'm just kidding. Let's try it together. The word is hamad. That means desirable. That means pleasing to the eye and desirable. So God created trees in the garden, and they were full of fruit, and God saw that they were tov and they were hamad. good and pleasing to the eye. And then he looks at Adam at this point, because Eve has not yet been created. In chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. And the Lord commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." Aren't you grateful that it wasn't like, well, every other tree is a tree of good and evil? You ever thought about that? Like, God didn't say there are secret, mysterious sin trees mixed in, and if you're not paying attention, it's going to get you. He put it right in the middle so that Adam would know exactly where it is, and he showed him exactly which tree not to eat from. Just one. It's the goodness of God. Look at all I've created for you. Look at all the fruit you can eat from. Look at everything that's available to you. But I'm not going to take away your ability to choose, but I'm going to make it hard on you because it's only one. And it's in the middle, and you know exactly where it is. Don't eat from that tree, or you will certainly die. See, when I look at that story, even the way I just said it to you, I don't see like, oh, there's a secret, like, oh, look how God put that in there for us to sin. I look at it and I say, look at all the options we have not to sin. Okay? The word we use for that is abundance. I mean, look at our abundant God who would create an entire garden in the middle of a desert. And he would populate it with trees that are not ugly and kind of taste bitter, but they're tov and hamad. They're good to look at and they're good to eat. The abundance of God. The word abundance, the way I wrote it, was just simply all we have is from God, therefore the supply is endless. That's what it means to live in abundance. Now, remember, I said it's about mindset, not money, right? So when we talk about abundance, I'm talking about the mindset of abundance. God gave us abundance, and now we have to have a mindset that accepts that abundance. Do you know that every good thing you have is from God? No. That car payment you make, that car, it's actually from God, not from your job. You want to know how I know that? Because God is the one who gave you the ability to work. And work has been happening before sin. Adam and Eve worked in the garden. It just wasn't difficult. See, work is a gift and part of the abundance of God. That we would actually, for those of us who can, we would actually do something with our life and live our life and not just watch it pass by. Everything you have is from God. And it's that abundance mindset that should drive us to move forward. But unfortunately, that ended pretty quickly. Because in the garden, there was a serpent. And the serpent was craftier than all the other animals. And the serpent, now that there was a woman named Eve, talked to Eve. And this is what the serpent said to her in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. He said to the woman, this is the serpent, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" What a weird question. Of course he didn't say that. We'd be starving. Did God say all of this that he's given you, you're not allowed to eat from? And the woman responded, well, that's not true. The woman responded and said, "We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." Now, one, God never said don't touch it. That was an Eve add-on, probably to keep herself from going to it. But secondarily, she's clarifying for the serpent, we're allowed to eat all of it. But I guess there is one we can't. And she starts to look at the tree a little differently. And in verse 5, the serpent says, For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So the serpent's like, hey, listen. So I know God said you could eat from all of them but one, but now that we're focused on the one you can't have, let's talk about it. See, God's actually holding out on you. I know he said he loves you, but he's actually trying to keep you under his thumb because he doesn't want you to become God like he's God. Did you see what happened? We just went from, look at this beautiful garden and all the things we have, to now all of a sudden we're focused on the one thing we don't have. That feels real familiar to me. You get like that? You ever get stuck on the one thing you don't have instead of all the things you do have? It started right here in the garden. So it says, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. And what's interesting is we as people automatically go, why'd the man take it? He knew he wasn't supposed to. The woman, right? Is the woman, right? But here's the truth. We need to understand that prior to sin, they were one. So him taking the fruit is not abnormal because they're covenant as one person. Sin has not made them separate yet. In fact, at this point, Eve is not even called Eve. Go back and look in Scripture when she gets her name. It's after sin. Now she's just woman from man. They are one. So it's not the woman's fault, and the man's not dumb. They're just one. Okay? She said, it's good for food, didn't she? It's pleasing to the eye and desirable. Well, as soon as I read that, I thought to myself, because we read in English, I thought to myself, yeah, that's exactly what God said. God said it was good for food and pleasing to the eye. And I'm like, let me just make sure I'm right. So I went back into Hebrew to make sure I was right. Like she said it was tov and chamad, right? Like it's the same. So the woman said the food was pleasing to the eye, good and desirable. The word good that she used is tov. Everybody say tov. Yeah. We're gonna turn this into a thing, okay? I'm gonna make sure you're using this when you get home. I'm gonna keep making you say that word, all right? So she said it was tov, but when I got to the word pleasing to the eye, it wasn't the same word. See, in English, we've made it the same word in the translation. But when Eve says it's pleasing to the eye, she uses the word ta'ava. Everybody say ta'ava. Okay. But then when it says and desirable, that word is chamad. So check it out. God says it's tov and hamad, good and pleasing to the eye. The woman says it's tov, hamad, and ta'ava. Ta'ava means to lust after something you don't have. See, she saw it the way God saw it. She saw the fruit the way God saw the fruit. But it wasn't hers, and she wanted it anyway. 3 words, not 2. Are you with me? Okay. Tov, ta'ava, and chamad. I think that lusting piece is a really important piece. What I want you to hear this morning, church, is that lust decays a generous heart. That if you're living a life where there's constantly things that you don't have that you want, you cannot also be generous. That doesn't mean you can't give money to things. That doesn't mean you can't be kind. But what it means is this generous mindset that we're talking about that God has cannot exist while you're constantly thinking about all the things you don't have because you're focused on what you don't have, not what God has given you. See how that works? Lust decays a generous heart, and it leads us to a place of the opposite of abundance, which is scarcity. Scarcity is anxiety and fear about what we don't have. See, God lives in an abundance mindset. Humanity naturally lives in a scarcity mindset. What do I not have that I wish I had, and how am I going to get it? Where God says, you have everything you need, and if you need more, I'll let you know. It's weird. It's weird. What I want you to hear this morning is that the natural state of humanity is a combination of scarcity and lust. The natural state of us as people is fighting for things we don't have and lusting after things we don't have. Ta'ava and scarcity. We just live that way constantly. How do I get more? How do I move up in the world? And how do I make that happen? And that's not something that is just for the non-believer. Church, that is something that exists in us as believers every day. Every day. You guys been eyeing my pie over here? This is kind of how I viewed my finances as a believer. Was just like a giant piece of pie. And every couple weeks I'd get paid. And at this point I had a small child in the home. And I would slice my first piece and I would look at it and I would say, mortgage. Right? And then I'd go in for my next piece and I would slice it. I mean, this is like a monthly thing here. I would slice it and I would say, okay, car payment. That would go to the side. And then I get a big old honking piece. And I would say student loans. And then a piece that was about the size of my student loans. And I would cut it. And I would say Starbucks. And then there'd be like kids' activities, right? At some point, we've got to do some activities. And then there'd be another piece that would be like going out to eat, maybe like a date night with my wife because the pastor told me that's a good idea. And I would put that on a piece. And then eventually, like I would start cutting really small pieces. And then I'd have, oh man, we're starting to run out of money. I need new tires on my car, right? So I'd have to have some kind of money for that. Oh, groceries. I forgot about groceries. And then I would get to the end and I would just be like, okay, I made it. Okay, I got it all here. And I would go, man, I love Jesus. And the truth is even in this season of my life, I wanted to give back to the church. And I wanted to give to the Lord because I knew that everything I had was from Him. So I would, man. Here, God, this is everything I got left. And I love you, and I know it's from you, so I wanted you to have what I have left. Folks, this is a scarcity mindset. This is, Lord, I love you, I want to live for you, but the truth is you get what I got left because I got to make sure I take care of my family. And I'd look at this and I would go, I keep hearing pastors talk about tithing. This is like 6%. My gutters are leaking, Like Jackson needs a new pair of shoes that we weren't ready for. And be like, okay, it wasn't 10% anyway, so here's what I got. This is how I existed for years of my life. God, you get the messiness that's left. And the truth is if I would have done it the other way, I'm not saying the slice would have been any bigger. But it wouldn't have looked like that. And that is how I started off as a person of scarcity. And sometimes, to be completely transparent with you, I feel myself gravitate back towards that kind of thinking. when gas prices get a little higher, food starts to cost a little more, I start thinking to myself, we do a little better than 10% as a family. If I just knock that back to 10%, I could take that little extra bit and offset some of the cost of gas. It still creeps in sometimes. This is what scarcity looks like to the believer. Okay? To a non-believer, you're like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about because I'm not trying to give money to God because I got enough on my plate. Okay? But to somebody who's trying to put God first in their life, when you're scraping the bottom of the tin, I promise you that's not putting him first in your life. So it was interesting as time went on. As time went on, I started to think about these things differently. Can I confess to you this morning that I didn't change the way I give until after I became a pastor? Can I just confess to you that my spiritual life was not perfect when I said yes to ministry? And that it took time of me thinking and trying to solve some of these issues myself that changed everything for me. And now, I'm not saying the slice is huge. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that every piece, every pie that comes by, every bit that the Lord has given me, this first piece, you can tell who cuts pie in our home, by the way. It's not me. Look at this messy piece. It's not always pretty, but it's first. Still not a big piece. It's not like I'm trying to give God 80% of my pay and somehow, that's not what I feel called to do. God's not asking me to live unwise. But what I'll tell you is, this feels a lot better than scraping the bottom of the pie tin. And I think it communicates something to our Father in heaven about how we see him. Same pie, new order. Same pie, new order. Great story, Pastor Tim, but make that make sense to me biblically. Where does it say that this is what we're supposed to do? Well, if we head to Deuteronomy, and as God is still forming the people of Israel and helping them understand how to live their life, and we jump over to Deuteronomy 26, God is speaking to the people as they're getting ready to enter into the promised land, and this is what he says. When you have entered the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, notice, who gave the land? God. Does it belong to them? It's an inheritance from God to them. You did nothing to deserve it. It's just from me, okay? As an inheritance, and you have taken possession of it and settled in it, take some of the first fruits, the first slice. Take some of the first fruits of all that you produce from the soil of the land. So take the first slice from your work and give it to the Lord your God. Put it in a basket. Okay? So they were told to take the first fruits. Obviously, this wasn't money, this was actual fruit, right? Take the first fruits of everything they had, put it in a basket, okay? And they're going to take it to somewhere. In verse 3, it tells us, then go to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name and say to the priest, so we know where we are, okay? We're in a synagogue. Right? We're in a place where God's people, once they scatter into the land, there'll be little tiny tabernacles that they can be a part of. Go to that place where God's name dwells. Go to the priest in office at that time and say this. I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come to the land the Lord swore to our ancestors to give us. Okay? Then you say, he brought us to this place. He brought us to this place and gave us this land. He gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now I bring the first fruits of the soil that you, Lord, have given me. Now, wait a minute. If I'm the farmer and I did all the work, what do you mean God gave me the first fruits and I'm just giving it back to him? That doesn't make any sense. Well, who gave you land? Who gave you rain? Who gave you a mind? Who gave you sun? We give God the first fruits of what he's already given us. Place the basket before the Lord your God and bow down before him. Okay? So it's really cool. Think about this. They gather everything in a basket, they take it to their local temple, and they lay it down, and then they drop to their knees, and they say, all of this is yours. So I'm giving you the first fruits back because I know that it's not me, it's you. That's it. Right? Doesn't that make you want to throw a party? Like, oh God, look what you give me, and look, I get to give back to you. They actually did throw a party, actually. If you go to verse 11, then you and the Levites and the foreigners, there were foreigners in Israel? Absolutely. There's lots and lots of things in Scripture about immigrants, just for the record. But they're foreigners in the land, okay, that you and the foreigners residing among you shall rejoice in all the good things the Lord your God has given you and your household. They threw a party and they talked about what God is doing in their lives and what God has given them. Because God is trying to draw them back to an abundance mindset. The land in Israel is hard to farm. They're surrounded by people who want to kill them. There's war happening all the time, and God is saying, I know things are rough, but listen, everything you have is from me. Abundance mindset, not scarcity mindset. Church, what I want you to hear this morning is that when we put God first in all things fall into place. When we put God first in all things fall into place. I was happy to put God first in my family. Happy to. I was happy to put God first in raising our children because I knew I needed him. I was happy to put God first in determining the outcomes of my life at times. Sometimes I fought him. But I'll tell you, the biggest struggle the Lord and I had was me putting him first of my finances. Because it just never feels like we have enough. And the Lord is continuing and has continued over 30 years, goodness, to remind me that he is all I need. And that if I put him first in all things fall into place. See, when giving to the church for Sarah and I, when giving to the church becomes a have to and not a when we feel like it, it's weird how we make different decisions with our money moving forward. So it like trickles down. Like, because I'm doing this, I'm probably not going to do this, and we probably should wait on this. But this is like the non-negotiable. Because this happens, everything else seems to fall underneath that. We say no to things because we're saying yes to God. And because we've put him first, everything else falls into place. And I'm not saying that slice is huge. I'm just saying he gets the first one. Okay? So, how do we move from scarcity to abundance, Tim? Like, fine, I understand, maybe my mindset is scarcity like yours, and I struggle to think about what I do have, and I'm too busy thinking about what I don't have. I'm waiting for that next promotion. I'm waiting for something to change in my life financially. I'm waiting to make just a little bit more, because if I made just a little bit more, I would finally be happy. You ever been there? I have. Man, if I could just have an extra $5,000 a year, I would be so happy. And I chased money all the way to being at my lowest point of my entire life, only to find myself in ministry. Money will not save you. It is never enough. Are you paying attention to the celebrities who are miserable? Money is never enough. Never enough. So how do we move from scarcity to abundance? First of all, we have to detach happiness from money. Okay? We have to stop saying to ourselves, if ... happens, I will be happy. Understand that money and happiness do not go hand in hand. Okay? The only way money makes you happy is if you're lusting for things that you don't have. Right? Bigger house, better car, right? You're lusting for things that are not currently being provided to you. You want more. I want to retire younger, right? It's something. There's always something out in front of us that I'm striving for. And in America, we actually promote that. Like, that is a good quality to be ambitious. And I'm not saying you can't be ambitious. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter if God's not first. It doesn't matter. So, detach money and happiness in the way you speak and over time in the way you think. Okay? You'll stop speaking it first. All right? But over time, it'll start to change the way you think. And just secondly, the second piece of that for me is give him the first slice. Give God the first slice. You want to see something change in your life? Listen, if you're not giving at all to the church or to the Lord in any way right now, we're not even talking about tithing, okay? First of all, tithing is something that pops up in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, when we talk about giving, it's the acknowledgement that all of it is already God's. It's already God's. The question is what is he asking of you in order to be generous? So if that first slice is so razor thin because your budget is so tight, I want you to know that God will bless it if you give it to him first. It's about first. It's not about how much. Okay? Now, as you're able to do that, the Lord starts to speak opportunities of generosity to you, and maybe he's asking you to crank it up a little bit, which is a whole different thing. But listen, if you're on a tight, fixed budget, and you know you've got an extra $3 a month that you could give to the Lord, I want you to know, give him that $3 before you spend $1. And watch what he does in your life. Whoa, Tim, are you saying if I give money to the church, I'm going to get like a bigger house? And I mean, if I call this number, like someone will send me something that'll like grow a money tree in my backyard? No, not at all. Not even close. Here's what I know to be true. Because God is not about money, he's about mindset. We shouldn't look for his blessings monetarily. We should look for them in the way our heart listens and speaks to others. It's not about money, it's about mindset. So, stop attaching happiness to abundance, happiness to money. Stop doing that, right? Focus on how I can give my first slice of everything that I have. So, I'm still bad at it, okay? I mean, I remember 6 or 7 years ago, Sarah and I getting our giving statement at the end of the year for taxes and knowing that we had given exactly 10% because I didn't want to give any more, and getting it back and realizing I gave 7% and going, what happened? We did it right. Like, what happened? And we start looking back and, oh, that's right. We went on vacation and we didn't double up when we got back. And, oh, that's right. We had 4 flat tires and we did. And I could see over and over again the places where I had cut corners because God was getting the first slice most of the time. And the only way I could fix that, and this is just me personally, is by online giving that's set up to be recurring. Okay? That first slice comes out even when I don't think about it. And then I get this email that says, you just gave to the church. And I'm like, yeah, I did. And no vacation stopped it, right? For me, that's what I have to do personally to keep myself giving God the first slice and be reminded and not be sidetracked by that. But folks, we all need to get to a place where he is getting a little bit of the first slice. In fact, I would say that Paul talks about this in 1 Timothy. Paul, in his letter to Timothy, which we're going to be studying on Wednesday nights, his letter to Timothy, when we get to chapter 6, verses 17 through 19, he's telling Timothy how he can lead the people in Ephesus well. And this is what he says. Paul says, command those who are rich in this present world. I don't care what you have right now. If we want to take some sort of survey and bring everyone from around the world into this room, you're rich. I don't care what you have. Which means most of us are embarrassingly rich. Let's be honest. Okay? Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. I don't know about you. I really, really want to experience life that is truly life. I don't even know what that means. I just know that at some point, as a kingdom-minded person, I stop breathing here and I'm with him. And I have laid a foundation through generosity of a relationship with the Lord for eternity. Life that is truly life. So as the worship team comes back up for our closing song, bottom line this morning, God doesn't need our money, just our total obedience. I was at a church service in the last 3 or 4 weeks that was not here. And it got time for them to do like the offering part where they pass the plate. You know what I mean? And like they say the things that try to get you like stirred up so you'll give, like that part. And the man from the stage said this. He's a pastor. He said, God has great plans for this place. But in order to accomplish them, we need your money. And I almost hopped out of my seat. I was so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. Because let me just help you. God doesn't need your money. All right? Connection Point does not need your money. Because anything God has called us to do as a people, he will equip us and give us what we need to accomplish. But church, God needs your obedience. And if I can be really transparent, Connection Point needs your obedience. Because when we as people are obedient together, something really great happens in the kingdom and in our personal lives. So, I don't need your money. That's not what this conversation's about. So if that's all you heard, you're listening to the enemy, not to me. All right? But here's what I'll say to you. When we are obedient, God does amazing things. Give him the first slice, because he's already given you everything you need.